Yeah, I think that goes to the cumulative effect, because you're adding more than twice as much to an educational institution, and that's a cumulative effect. And so,
Okay, well, we beat 1 to death. How about we move on to 2? And we'll see what you guys have brought.
Your Honor, just one potential request. Could we do a 12:30 count? I'm afraid if you do the 11 or the 1, you're on the shoulders of the kind of the lunch period. If that was deemed to be the peak of demand, would a 12:30 in the middle of the noon hour
Be okay with you guys?
I'm just afraid of counting 11 is really early ahead of the lunch demand. 1, you may miss some.
Is that okay with you, Catherine?
If
Is that
that's
with you?
okay.
Thank you for thinking
just
about
to
Make it 12:30 then.
make sure we don't miss information again. I want to make sure we capture whatever it is the council and the board wishes to.
Or if I may, can we restate when these counts will take place?
Well, there's only going to be 1. It's going to be at 12:30 because the 9 and the 2's done. Unless we're going to redo those two?
I would recommend that we do as staff, because the conditions are very different with the students being out at the University of Idaho. So we will do it at 9, 12:30, and 2. We can look at the percentage increase of demand during the noon hour. That will be information that the board could extrapolate that when students are in session, just to be able to give a bigger picture. But in order to maintain consistency with how it was done previously, I think that'll give us the best value of the additional information. I'm afraid a 12:30 count now will leave us with we'll leave the board with a lot of questions of, well, that's great, but college is out of session, and how do we relate this to the prior counts that were taken? So I do think it would be to the benefit of the board to do the 9 and 2 again.
I think so, too.
Okay.
One more comment, Bill, if I might.
You're going to have plenty of time. We got 4 more of these.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, John.
The only thing I'm going to say is I have the uncomfortable feeling that if the study that we are just now requiring that the city doesn't come out with a requirement that New St. Andrews will have to supply 1 parking place for every student, we are going to continually go over this thing. It is always going to be brought back to us until we finally say enough is enough. And we certainly aren't there tonight.
Okay, well, let's move on. John, what do you got to say about number 2?
Pretty much the same thing as I've been saying right along. I think that this whole parking issue is a bit of a smokescreen, and I think there's some other reason, and I don't know what that is. Possibly the people that are bringing this to us could tell us that, but I don't think that the parking issue, 2 things. I don't think we can solve the parking issue in downtown Moscow. It is what it is. It's been that way for a long time. It's going to continue to be that way. And so saying that this group or that group has to supply 785 parking places, I think that is ridiculous.
Okay, well, let's move on to comments on 2. Art, what's your take on number 2?
I think the points that were of most interest to me on appeal number 2 were already covered in number 1.
Okay, but the catch is each one of these have either got to be sustained, denied, or remanded back.
Well,
Each one of these, so we have 4 more of these we're going to hammer
So on
out,
number 2, because the issues are involved deeply with number 1, I would say deny number 2.
Second.
in other words, you're sustaining
You're sustaining.
I'm sustaining the
the Board of
Board
Adjustment.
of Adjustment decision.
Okay, so we have a sustained on the Board of Adjustments on appellant number 2, and we, by, Art made the motion, Jim made the second.
To sustain,
To sustain the Board of Adjustment.
To agree with what the Board of Adjustments
Per
said.
the Board of Adjustment's decision.
Yep. Art's motion, Jim's second. Any discussion? Start with you, John.
I'll vote to sustain the Board of Adjustments decision.
Okay.
I will as well.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Okay, so number 2, appellant will will not be heard by them. And okay, let's go to number 3, appellant number 3, Tina Hilding.
I move to remand this appeal back to the Board of Adjustment for insufficient information based on the cumulative effect for number 7. It has to do with the contradiction criteria. Number 7 is with comprehensive plan. Because criteria 7 talks about that it wouldn't be in conflict with the comprehensive plan. This has to do with the fact that the Central Business District in 2015 used the word intensive to define itself, which goes back to the original thing we talked about in appellate letter 1, which has to do, this is an educational institution, not a commercial use.
Well, your motion has died for lack of a second.
Okay, that's okay. Got it out there.
Although I do have a question, seems we're talking about student FTEs at this point of the appeal. And this would be for you, Dr. Merkel, is that are all the students for the conservatory, all 300 new students, going to be only at the new location?
Okay, so the 300 students is to be a credit-bearing student at New St. Andrews, and you're asking if will all those 300 students be only at, so would we put 300 in one and 200 here? I think that the bulk of the students would probably stay in one place, but I could see crossover, and our plan for monitoring that would be a full-time load is monitored by number of credits. So our thought was to make a maximum number of credits that could be offered, and a credit has to happen in a particular place.
Right.
So we would make the maximum number of credits that could happen in one building so that no more than 200 students could be in our current building, no more than 300
Or
there.
rather, not students, but FTEs.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, full-time enrollment, yes.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Your Honor, I move that we sustain the board's decision on appeal number 3.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion by Gina and a second by John to sustain the appellant number 2 for the board is sustained. Questions on that?
You answered my question on that one.
Yeah, that's my.
Okay, we'll start to roll with you, Art.
Aye?
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so number 3 is sustained. We'll move on to number 4. Appellant number 4, John Davis.
I move we sustain the Board of Appeals decision on appeal number 4.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Catherine and a second by Jim to sustain the Board of Adjustments on appellant number 4. Discussion on that. We're all good? I'll start with the roll, John.
Aye.
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 Okay. Appellant number 5, David Hall.
Once again, relative to the consideration more data being needed, I think that's being addressed with our previous position on appeal number 1.
John?
Was that form of a motion?
Well, it could be.
No.
I move sustaining the Board of Adjustments finding on the matters discussed in number 5.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion by Art and a second by John to sustain appellant number 5 for the Board of Appeals. And I'll start the roll with John.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that is sustained. So what we have, ladies and gentlemen, is appellant number 1. We'll be going back to Board of Adjustments for what was discussed, and that has to do with the studies. And something about the separation of parking, too.
Well, reevaluate the
Yes.
comparisons that were used.
So now, a question, we don't do anything on relevant criteria or any of those matters, but it's important for the group to know that this appellant number 1 is remanded back. So what is the course of action that the Board of Adjustment will do now? Bill?
If I might clarify, while you don't do a reason statement of relevant criteria, we will be drafting remand instructions for the council's review and approval to go back to the board. So what we'll do is we'll draft essentially the decision document of the council that directs us to be remanded back to the board with the specific instruction as was received this evening. We'll probably bring that back through committee and then through the council at the next meeting for the council's approval. That will give then written instruction to the board for reconsideration. Those additional studies will be conducted. We'll notice it for another public hearing, and it will be reheard then by the Board of Adjustment and with the instructions as provided by the council.